Welcome back. Tonight we explore the fascinating story of the Siege of Jerusalem. This massive battle is one of the most stunning of all antiquity. As always, relax and let yourself drift away. Let's begin. In 70 CE, Jerusalem stood defiant against the Roman Empire. Its once impregnable walls now faced Rome's legions as defenders prepared for the coming onslaught. Cracks in the ancient stone betrayed the city's vulnerability, a stark reminder of the impending clash. The fate of a people hung in the balance. As the shadow of Rome's armies lengthened over Jerusalem's walls, one question burned in the minds of those who witnessed this pivotal moment. What drove Rome to such fury? The answer lay hidden in a tapestry of long simmering conflicts. As the siege intensified, the true motives behind this cataclysmic event began to emerge. Join us as we uncover the tragic tale of Jerusalem's darkest hour and explore how this moment reshaped Western civilization for millennia to come. Just years before this fateful siege, in the 1st century CE, Jerusalem stood as a testament to Jewish faith and culture, a city steeped in history and religious significance. Under Roman rule, the inhabitants of Jerusalem experienced a period of relative stability and peace. The city's streets bustled with activity as merchants traded goods from distant lands. Pilgrims flocked to the temple to offer sacrifices, and scholars debated the finer points of religious law in the city's numerous synagogues. The Second Temple, reconstructed and expanded under Herod the Great, dominated the cityscape. Its gleaming white limestone walls and golden ornaments served as a constant reminder of Jerusalem's central role in Jewish religious life. The temple complex was not only a place of worship, but also the heart of the city's economic and social activities. But beneath this facade of normalcy, discontent simmered. Roman occupation, while providing stability, came at a significant cost. Burdensome taxation strained resources, while the presence of Roman soldiers with their pagan customs eroded traditional Jewish ways of life. Cultural tensions mounted as Roman influence permeated daily life, from architecture to language, creating a sense of cultural erosion among traditionalists. Roman governors struggled to maintain order in this volatile environment. Some, like Pontius Pilate, became notorious for their heavy-handed approach to quelling unrest, further exacerbating tensions. Religious zealots and political agitators gained increasing influence, with groups like the Zealots advocating for violent resistance against Roman rule. The Sicarii, an extremist offshoot, spread fear through assassination, while apocalyptic preachers prophesied the imminent arrival of God's kingdom. The atmosphere in Jerusalem grew increasingly volatile. Public demonstrations against Roman authority became more frequent and intense. Minor skirmishes between protesters and Roman soldiers erupted with alarming regularity. The air was thick with tension, and many sensed that a breaking point was fast approaching. Signs of impending conflict became more apparent as the decade wore on. Roman military presence in and around Jerusalem was bolstered with additional cohorts stationed in strategic locations. The fortress Antonia, overlooking the temple complex, was reinforced, its walls heightened, and its garrison expanded. Within the Jewish community, weapons were stockpiled in secret caches throughout the city, and young men trained in warfare under the guise of religious study. The spark that ignited this powder keg came in 66 CE, when the Roman procurator Gessius Florus seized silver from the temple treasury. This blatant sacrilege, coupled with the brutal suppression of the ensuing protests, proved to be the final straw. The resentment and anger that had been building for decades finally exploded. The First Jewish-Roman War erupted with a fury that shocked even those who had long anticipated conflict. What began as a local revolt in Jerusalem quickly spread throughout Judea, as Jewish rebels overwhelmed Roman garrisons and established control over large swathes of territory. The initial success of the rebellion sent shockwaves through the Roman Empire, setting the stage for a confrontation that would forever alter the course of Jewish history. The magnitude of these Jewish victories demanded an imperial response. Emperor Nero, recognizing the urgent need to reassert Roman authority, turned to Vespasian in 67 CE, a battle-hardened general with a long record of military service in Britain and Africa, to suppress the revolt in Judea. Vespasian's appointment marked the beginning of a methodical and brutal campaign that would reshape the landscape of the region and set the stage for a climactic confrontation at the walls of Jerusalem. Vespasian's campaign began in April 67 CU with a strategic focus on subduing Galilee, the northern region of Judea. The Roman forces under his command were formidable, comprising approximately 60,000 troops across 4 legions. This substantial military presence demonstrated the seriousness with which Rome viewed the Jewish rebellion. The siege of Jotapata in Galilee exemplified the effectiveness of Vespasian's approach. The town, defended by the Jewish commander Josephus, fell to the Roman onslaught after a prolonged siege. This victory secured a strategic foothold for the Romans and resulted in the capture of Josephus, who became a valuable source of information for the Roman war effort. As Vespasian's legions advanced through the Judean countryside, they employed brutal tactics designed to crush resistance and demoralize the population. The Roman strategy focused on methodically reducing fortifications rather than engaging in open field battles, an approach that proved devastatingly effective against the scattered Jewish forces. Josephus later wrote, "The Romans slew all the youth and burned the city, filling the sea with blood and the maritime parts with fire and slaughter." This grim account served as a testament to the Roman tactics, striking fear into other towns that might consider resisting. Despite being outmatched in terms of training, organization, and equipment, the Jewish defenders fought with fierce determination. Their resistance was fueled by religious fervor and a desperate desire to preserve their way of life. However, the superior tactics and resources of the Roman legions gradually wore down the Jewish forces, pushing them back towards Jerusalem. As the Roman campaign progressed, Vespasian's son, Titus, emerged as a capable commander. His leadership skills would prove crucial in the later stages of the conflict, particularly during the siege of Jerusalem. Titus's ability to coordinate complex military operations and inspire his troops played a significant role in the ultimate outcome of the war. The relentless Roman advance had far-reaching consequences for the population of Judea. As towns fell to Vespasian's forces, displaced Jews sought refuge in Jerusalem. The Holy City saw its population swell dramatically, placing enormous pressure on its resources and setting the stage for a humanitarian crisis that would compound the difficulties faced by the defenders. By 70 CE, Jerusalem stood as the last major stronghold of Jewish resistance. The city's defenses had been strengthened, but they were about to face their greatest test. As the Roman legions drew closer, tensions within Jerusalem reached a fever pitch, with different factions vying for control. The Romans, now under Titus's command, began to encircle Jerusalem. They constructed a circumvallation line around the city to cut off supplies and prevent escape or resupply. This tactic, while time-consuming, proved crucial in wearing down the resolve of those trapped within the city walls. As the siege progressed, Titus employed sophisticated siege techniques. Massive battering rams assaulted Jerusalem's formidable walls, while siege towers allowed Roman archers to rain arrows upon the defenders. The Jewish fighters responded with desperate courage, using every means at their disposal to repel the Roman assaults. The battle for Jerusalem unfolded as a series of brutal engagements, with the Romans slowly advancing through the city's layered defenses. Each street and building became a potential battleground as the defenders fought to deny the Romans every inch of ground. The civilian population, caught in this titanic struggle, faced unimaginable hardships as food supplies dwindled and hope of relief faded. Yet even before the Romans breached the outer walls, Jerusalem's defenders faced an unexpected enemy from within. The city's massive walls and natural defenses had repelled invaders for centuries, but now an invisible force threatened to topple Jerusalem before a single Roman soldier breached its gates. The Holy City, once united in faith, found itself deeply fractured on the eve of its greatest trial. Jerusalem's formidable defenses, both natural and man-made, had long been the envy of other cities. Yet these physical barriers, impressive as they were, could not protect against the rot that had taken hold within. Like a mighty oak hollowed by disease, Jerusalem's strength was being undermined by internal strife. The Jewish defenders, numbering around 20,000, were a fractious mix of militiamen, refugees, and zealots. Far from presenting a united front against the Roman threat, these disparate groups were locked in a bitter struggle for control of the city. Two main factions emerged as the dominant forces: Simon bar Giora, who controlled the upper city and Herod's palace, and John of Giscala, who held sway over the Temple Mount and its surrounding neighborhoods. The Zealots, under John of Giscala's leadership, were particularly aggressive in their approach. Viewing the moderate leadership as responsible for the failures of the revolt, they resorted to violence against their political opponents. This internal strife reached a bloody climax when John of Giscala's group murdered Eleazar ben Simon, the leader of a third faction. As the factions battled for supremacy, the civilian population found itself caught in a deadly crossfire. Moderate voices, once a source of reason and stability, were silenced or forced to flee. The priest Josephus, who had once commanded Jewish forces against the Romans, now found himself on the outside looking in, his pleas for negotiation falling on deaf ears. The infighting took a devastating toll on Jerusalem's ability to withstand a prolonged siege. In a shocking act of self-sabotage, factional fighting led to the destruction of vital grain stores. This senseless act critically lowered the city's food supplies, leaving it vulnerable to the Roman tactic of starving out the defenders. As Titus's legions approached, constructing a circumvallation line to cut off all access to the city, the magnitude of this blunder became painfully apparent. The division of the city's defenders into competing factions had dire consequences for the overall defense strategy. Instead of coordinating their efforts and pooling resources, each group jealously guarded its territory and supplies. The lack of a unified command structure meant that there was no coherent plan to repel the Roman assault. Each faction prioritized its own survival over the collective defense of Jerusalem, a fatal flaw that would soon be exploited by the methodical Roman war machine. As news of the approaching Roman army filtered into the city, the tension within Jerusalem's walls reached a fever pitch. The Zealots intensified their campaign of violence against anyone they perceived as lacking in revolutionary fervor. Moderates who dared to suggest negotiation or surrender were branded as traitors and dealt with harshly. This atmosphere of suspicion and retribution further eroded the city's ability to mount an effective defense, turning what should have been a stronghold into a powder keg ready to explode. While internal chaos consumed Jerusalem, an unprecedented force gathered at its gates. 4 Roman legions converged on the city, their numbers swelling to approximately 60,000 men. This massive army, including the battle-hardened Legio V Macedonica, Legio X Fretensis, Legio XIII Fulminata, and Legio XV Apollinaris, redefined siege warfare. Yet even the mighty Roman legions were about to face resistance beyond their expectations. The Roman army's composition reflected the empire's vast reach and military sophistication. Supporting the core legions were auxiliary infantry, cavalry units, and local troops supplied by client rulers. This diverse force represented the full might of Rome's imperial war machine. As Titus positioned his legions around Jerusalem's perimeter, the enormity of the coming battle became apparent. The Romans began constructing siege works and camps, transforming the landscape into a militarized zone. Earthworks rose from the ground, and the clang of metal echoed across the Judean hills as siege engines took shape. Despite the overwhelming numbers arrayed against them, Jerusalem's defenders refused to yield. They launched daring raids against the Roman encampments, utilizing their intimate knowledge of the terrain. One such raid nearly changed the course of history, when Titus narrowly escaped capture while surveying the city's defenses. This close call served as a stark reminder that the Jewish defenders, fighting for their very existence, would not yield easily to the empire's might. As the siege progressed, the Romans responded with characteristic efficiency. They constructed a circumvallation line, stretching approximately 4.5 miles around Jerusalem, preventing supplies from reaching the besieged city and trapping the defenders within. Massive battering rams were wheeled into position, and siege towers rose against the skyline, offering elevated platforms for Roman archers. Yet, for all their technological advantages, the Romans found themselves locked in a grueling contest of wills. The Jewish defenders utilized every resource, turning the city itself into a weapon. They launched counterattacks from unexpected quarters, using their knowledge of Jerusalem's layout to strike at vulnerable points in the Roman lines. The intensity of the conflict was evident in the speed with which the Romans breached Jerusalem's outermost wall. Within 15 days, the first line of defense crumbled. This swift progress, however, only steeled the resolve of Jerusalem's defenders. As the Romans poured through the breach, they found themselves embroiled in vicious street-to-street fighting, every inch of ground contested with fanatical determination. As Passover approached, the situation within Jerusalem grew increasingly dire. The influx of pilgrims, trapped by the Roman encirclement, strained the city's dwindling resources, food supplies, depleted by factional fighting, and now under immense pressure from the swollen population, began to run critically low. The specter of famine loomed large, threatening to accomplish what Roman arms had yet failed to do. This crisis was no accident. As the holy festival approached, Jerusalem's population had swelled with pilgrims seeking to celebrate in the sacred city. Thousands of Jews from across Judea streamed towards the temple, unaware that they were walking into a trap carefully laid by the Roman general Titus. In a cunning strategic maneuver, Titus permitted the pilgrims to enter Jerusalem, but prevented their departure, effectively weaponizing the religious celebration against the city's inhabitants. The streets of Jerusalem, once filled with the joyous sounds of celebration and the aroma of festive meals, now echoed with the confusion and distress of trapped pilgrims. The air grew thick with tension as the realization of their predicament settled upon the celebrants. Where there should have been the chanting of prayers and the sharing of ritual meals, there was now the growing murmur of fear and disbelief. The transformation of Jerusalem from a place of spiritual devotion to a crucible of desperation was swift and jarring. The Temple Mount, typically a site of reverence and awe, became a makeshift refuge for those who found themselves unexpectedly imprisoned within the city walls. The courtyards, once filled with the devout performing sacred rites, now overflowed with bewildered pilgrims seeking shelter and answers. As days passed, the atmosphere within Jerusalem grew increasingly desperate. The pilgrim's journey, which began as a hopeful ascent to the holy city, now felt like a descent into a nightmarish trap. One could almost see the light of faith dimming in the eyes of the trapped worshippers as they grappled with their new reality. The Roman strategy proved devastatingly effective. What was intended to be a time of religious observance and spiritual renewal had been transformed into a nightmare of deprivation and suffering. The very traditions that had drawn people to Jerusalem now served to entrap them, as the city's resources buckled under the weight of its swollen population. The influx of pilgrims had a profound and complex impact on Jerusalem's defense. Some of the more able-bodied visitors, driven by religious zeal or a sense of duty, joined the ranks of the defenders. This unexpected reinforcement provided a temporary boost to the city's fighting capability and morale. However, The majority of the pilgrims, unprepared for the harsh realities of a besieged city, quickly became an additional burden on the already strained resources. As the siege tightened its grip, the defenders faced their first great trial. The factional divisions that had plagued Jerusalem's defense now threatened to unravel completely under the pressure of dwindling resources and mounting desperation. The influx of pilgrims, while initially seen as a potential boon to the city's defenses, now exacerbated these tensions as different groups vied for control over the rapidly diminishing food supplies. For the Romans, the knowledge that their strategy was working as intended bolstered their resolve. They could see the increasing desperation of those trapped within the city and knew that time was on their side. The longer the siege continued, the weaker Jerusalem's defenses would become, not just from lack of supplies, but from the internal strife that was sure to follow as conditions worsened. Before them stood their first major obstacle, the third wall, a formidable barrier between the Roman forces and the heart of Jerusalem. This marvel of first-century engineering, with its massive stone blocks and strategic towers, symbolized the city's resilience and determination to resist the invaders. Titus, recognizing the wall's critical importance, marshaled the full might of his army against it. The Roman force, comprising 4 legions and auxiliary units, deployed an array of siege equipment against the wall. Battering rams pounded relentlessly against weak points, while towering siege engines allowed Roman archers and soldiers to engage the defenders at close range. In response, the Jewish defenders demonstrated remarkable resilience and ingenuity, launching daring sorties to disrupt the Roman siege works. The defenders' efforts to protect their fortifications often resulted in fierce hand-to-hand combat, as they attempted to set fire to siege engines and eliminate Roman soldiers. The Romans, drawing upon their extensive experience in siege warfare, employed innovative tactics to safeguard their equipment and began work on a circumvallation line to cut off remaining supply lines. As the assault entered its second week, the toll on both sides became increasingly apparent. The constant barrage of projectiles, close-quarters combat, and grueling physical demands resulted in mounting casualties. Roman soldiers faced not only determined resistance, but also the challenges posed by Jerusalem's natural defenses, including steep ravines and the city's elevated position. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the defenders of Jerusalem continued to display remarkable bravery. They utilized the city's complex network of streets and buildings to stage ambushes against Roman units that ventured too close to the walls. These tactics succeeded in slowing the Roman advance and exacting a heavy price for every meter gained. The third wall's projecting square towers provided strong points for the defenders to rain down missiles and fire upon the attacking Romans. However, the relentless assault began to take its toll. Cracks appeared in the massive stone blocks, and sections of the wall showed signs of instability under the continuous battering. For 15 days, the third wall stood firm against the Roman onslaught. The air was filled with the thunderous impact of battering rams, the whoosh of flaming projectiles, and the cries of soldiers on both sides. The defenders fought with the desperation of those protecting their homes and holy sites, while the Romans pressed forward with unwavering determination. On the 15th day of the assault, the inevitable occurred. A section of the third wall crumbled under the relentless pounding of Roman siege engines. The Jewish historian Josephus, who witnessed the event, wrote, "The noise of the falling wall was so great that it caused a terror among the Jews, as if the whole city had been overthrown." This breach sent shockwaves of both despair and determination through the ranks of the defenders. As Roman soldiers poured through the gap, the Jewish fighters executed a strategic withdrawal to the second wall, preparing to make their stand on the next line of defense. The fall of the third wall marked a critical turning point in the siege, bringing the Romans one step closer to their ultimate goal of conquering Jerusalem. In the chaotic aftermath of the breach, Jerusalem's defenders faced a nightmarish scenario. The narrow streets of the new city quarter transformed into killing grounds where every corner concealed potential death. The Jewish defenders, though outnumbered and facing starvation, drew upon their intimate knowledge of Jerusalem's layout to mount a fierce resistance. They utilized guerrilla tactics, launching surprise attacks against Roman forces before disappearing into the labyrinthine streets. This urban warfare negated much of Rome's military superiority, as the confined spaces made it difficult for the legionaries to operate in their usual formations. Houses became makeshift fortresses with barricaded doorways, firing positions at windows, and rooftops, serving as vantage points for raining projectiles on the advancing Romans. Every structure posed a potential ambush site, forcing the Romans to fight for each meter of ground within the city. Titus's forces faced significant challenges in this urban environment. Narrow streets became bottlenecks, where tightly packed Roman soldiers made easy targets for Jewish archers and slingers. The Romans attempted to breach these impromptu fortifications using battering rams and siege towers, but the defenders' hit-and-run tactics disrupted their efforts, causing heavy casualties among the attackers. The Jewish fighters, led by Simon bar Giora and John of Giscala, coordinated their efforts to maximize the effectiveness of their limited resources. They utilized captured Roman weaponry and launched coordinated attacks to disrupt Roman supply lines within the city. Despite their internal divisions, the defenders presented a united front against the Roman onslaught, their shared determination to protect the Holy City temporarily overshadowing factional differences. As the battle raged, Jerusalem's civilian population found themselves caught in a hellish crossfire. Many were trapped in their homes, unable to flee as the fighting engulfed entire neighborhoods. Josephus, the Jewish historian, recorded that the streets were filled with corpses as the siege progressed. The impact on non-combatants was devastating. As food supplies dwindled and sanitation collapsed, disease spread rapidly through the overcrowded quarters. Josephus noted wives snatching food from husbands, children from fathers, and mothers from infants. The desperation reached unimaginable depths, with reports of starvation-induced cannibalism emerging. Despite the chaos and suffering, the defenders of Jerusalem continued to resist with remarkable tenacity. They utilized the city's underground passages and drainage systems to move unseen, launching attacks on Roman positions before disappearing into the urban maze. This constant harassment took a toll on Roman morale. As soldiers found themselves in a constant state of alertness, the Romans adapted their tactics, employing smaller, more mobile units that could navigate the narrow streets more effectively. Titus ordered the construction of additional siege engines and ramps to overcome the defensive advantages of the city's layout. He also made use of Jewish deserters for intelligence on the defenders' positions and tactics. As the battle intensified, both sides suffered significant losses. The air was thick with smoke from burning buildings, adding to the nightmarish quality of the combat. Yet despite the mounting casualties and hellish conditions, neither side yielded. The fierce street fighting continued for 5 grueling days, with the battle swinging back and forth between the two forces, each side driven by their own motivations to press on relentlessly. But while swords and spears claimed their toll, a far more insidious enemy began to tighten its grip on the city. The prolonged siege had transformed Jerusalem into a crucible of suffering, where the pangs of hunger resonated more loudly than the clash of steel. With each passing day, the specter of famine loomed larger, casting a dark shadow over the once vibrant streets of the Holy City. The influx of pilgrims and refugees had placed an unprecedented strain on Jerusalem's food supplies. The swollen population, trapped within the confines of the besieged walls, rapidly depleted the city's granaries and storehouses. As rations dwindled, survival became the sole focus for many of Jerusalem's inhabitants. The effects of starvation soon became apparent, etching themselves into the very fabric of daily life. The streets, once bustling with commerce and religious fervor, now echoed with the weak cries of the starving and the shuffling feet of those searching for any morsel of sustenance. Citizens resorted to consuming items never meant for human consumption. Leather belts, worn thin from use, became a prized source of nutrition. Shoes, once symbols of status or practicality, were now viewed through the lens of potential sustenance. Even grass, plucked from between the cobblestones, found its way into the mouths of the famished. The wealthy, their fortunes rendered meaningless in the face of scarcity, exchanged entire inheritances for mere scraps of moldy bread. As the situation deteriorated, reports of even more horrific measures began to circulate. In the darkest corners of the city, whispers of cannibalism emerged, a grim testament to the depths of human desperation. These accounts highlighted the brutal reality of siege warfare and its capacity to strip away the veneer of civilization. The defenders of Jerusalem, facing their own dire circumstances, made the difficult decision to requisition the remaining food stores. This move, while potentially necessary for maintaining the city's defenses, left many civilians to face the full brunt of starvation. The choice between preserving the fighting force and feeding the populace was a cruel one, further exacerbating the tensions within the besieged city. The toll of prolonged starvation manifested in myriad ways. Physical deterioration was evident in the gaunt faces and emaciated bodies of Jerusalem's inhabitants. Muscles wasted away, leaving many too weak to perform even basic tasks. The immune system, compromised by malnutrition, left the population vulnerable to diseases that would normally be manageable. Psychological effects were equally devastating, with hunger-induced delirium and depression becoming commonplace. As the siege wore on, the streets of Jerusalem became a grim testament to the power of famine. Thousands of emaciated bodies littered the thoroughfares, their silent forms a stark contrast to the vibrant city that had existed mere months before. The sight of so many dead, victims not of Roman weapons, but of hunger itself, served as a brutal reminder of the siege's effectiveness and the dire straits in which the defenders found themselves. The famine gripping Jerusalem drew parallels to other infamous sieges throughout history. Starvation proved to be a more potent killer than direct combat. The slow, inexorable nature of famine wore down not just the bodies of the besieged, but their will to resist. In this moment of deepening desperation, an unexpected turn of events offered a glimmer of hope to the beleaguered city. Titus, the Roman general leading the siege, made a surprising decision to halt his assault and extend an offer of negotiation to the defenders. This move stemmed from a desire to avoid further bloodshed and destruction, as Titus recognized the toll the siege was taking on both sides. Titus dispatched Josephus, the Jewish historian who had defected to the Roman side, as an emissary to negotiate with the city's leadership. Josephus, once respected among his people, now found himself mediating between two implacable foes. His mission was to persuade the defenders to accept Roman terms and spare Jerusalem from further suffering. As Josephus approached the city walls, tension filled the air. The defenders, who had endured months of starvation and warfare, regarded their former compatriot with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. When Josephus spoke, his words ignited intense debate among Jerusalem's fractured leadership. Within the city, opinions on Titus's offer were sharply divided. Some argued for capitulation, seeing it as the only way to save lives and preserve the temple. These pragmatists emphasized the futility of continued resistance against the overwhelming Roman forces. Others, the hardliners, viewed any talk of surrender as treason. For them, yielding to Rome meant abandoning their divine mission and betraying those who had fought for Jerusalem's independence. Josephus continued his appeals from beyond the walls, emphasizing the opportunity to save lives and cultural heritage. He warned of the consequences of refusal, the complete annihilation of Jerusalem and Jewish autonomy in Judea. However, his words largely fell on deaf ears. The defenders, consumed by zeal and desperation, met his appeals with insults and projectiles. This hostile reception underscored the deep divisions among the Jewish factions in Jerusalem. The presence of Josephus, now seen as a traitor by many, hardened the resolve of those opposing negotiation with the Romans. As debates within the city grew more heated, the window for a peaceful resolution narrowed. The Roman forces remained poised to resume their assault at any moment. The internal strife among the factions further complicated matters. The lack of a unified command structure, which had already weakened the city's defense, now threatened to derail any chance of reaching a consensus on Titus's offer. Factions, more concerned with maintaining their power and ideological purity, struggled to find common ground. In the end, the hardliners prevailed. Jerusalem's leaders, driven by religious fervor, mistrust of Roman intentions, and fear of being branded collaborators, rejected Titus's offer. This decision effectively sealed the city's fate, closing the door on what may have been the last opportunity to avoid total destruction. Josephus, in his historical account, noted the tragic irony of the situation. The seditious at last took upon them to destroy men of the noblest families, under pretense that they held correspondence with the Romans for a wretched hope of safety to themselves. This observation highlighted how the factions' internal conflicts ultimately contributed to Jerusalem's downfall, prioritizing their power struggles over the welfare of the city and its inhabitants. These internal divisions would soon prove catastrophic, for a far greater threat gathered at the city's gates. The Antonia fortress, sentinel of the Temple Mount, now stood as the final barrier between Roman ambition and total victory. What followed was a battle that would shake the very foundations of the Holy City. The Antonia fortress loomed as a formidable obstacle, its thick walls and strong towers a testament to Jewish resolve. Situated at the northwest corner of the Temple Mount, this stronghold served as both a critical defensive position and a strategic offensive point for the besieged city. Titus, recognizing the fortress as the key to breaching Jerusalem's inner defenses, set his sights on this imposing structure. The Roman war machine sprang into action, employing a multitude of siege tactics to overcome the fortress's defenses. Massive battering rams pounded relentlessly against the thick walls, while siege towers provided cover for Roman troops attempting to scale the fortifications. From their elevated position, Jewish defenders rained down missiles upon the Roman attackers, launching devastating sorties against the siege works. Undeterred by initial setbacks, the Romans began constructing enormous earthen ramps. These massive structures, built under constant fire from above, allowed Roman forces to bring their siege engines within striking distance of the fortress walls. The landscape around the Antonia fortress transformed into a buzzing hive of activity as thousands of Roman soldiers labored to create these artificial hills of earth and timber. The protracted struggle exacted a heavy toll on both sides. Roman legionaries fell by the score as they attempted to breach the walls, while the Jewish defenders suffered under the constant barrage of Roman artillery. The once pristine walls of the fortress now stood scarred and battered, a reflection of the brutal conflict that raged around them. As days turned to weeks, the fate of Jerusalem hung in the balance. The Antonia fortress, though weakened, continued to stand defiant against the Roman onslaught. Its fall would expose the temple itself to direct attack, a prospect that filled the defenders with dread and steeled their resolve to fight to the last. The turning point came unexpectedly. Heavy rains had saturated the ground, weakening the foundations of the northern wall. The constant pounding of Roman siege engines finally took its toll. With a thunderous roar, a section of the northern wall collapsed, creating a breach that the Romans were quick to exploit. Seizing the opportunity, Titus ordered a daring night assault. Roman troops poured through the gap, engaging the surprised defenders in fierce close-quarters combat. The narrow confines of the fortress negated much of the Romans' numerical advantage, but their momentum proved unstoppable. Room by room, corridor by corridor, the Romans fought their way deeper into the Antonia fortress. The Jewish defenders, realizing the dire nature of their situation, fought with renewed fervor. Every inch of ground was contested, Every doorway became a battleground. The clash of steel on steel echoed through the stone halls as the two forces engaged in a desperate struggle for control of the fortress. As dawn broke, the Roman standard flew over the battered remains of the Antonia fortress. The formidable stronghold, which had for so long stood as a symbol of Jewish resistance, had finally fallen. Like a great tree toppled by a relentless storm, the fortress that once seemed impregnable now lay broken and conquered. With its collapse, the last defensive barrier before Jerusalem's heart had crumbled, leaving the sacred temple exposed to the imminent Roman assault. From the conquered heights of Antonia, all eyes turned to the next target, the Second Temple, that rose majestically before them. This architectural marvel, a city within a city, now stood as the final redoubt of Jewish resistance. Its thick walls and towering structures, rising 150 feet into the air, presented a formidable challenge to the Roman war machine. Yet, as the final phase of the siege began, the situation for the defenders grew increasingly desperate. The temple complex, once a place of pilgrimage and spiritual solace, had transformed into a fortress of last resort. Its courtyards and porticos, typically filled with the murmur of prayer and the smoke of sacrifices, now echoed with the clash of steel and the cries of the wounded. The Jewish defenders, their ranks thinned by months of siege and starvation, fought with a fervor that transcended mere military duty. For them, this was not just a battle for survival, but a divine mandate to protect the very heart of their faith. Josephus, the Jewish historian who had defected to the Roman side, captured the intensity of their resolve. As the flames shot into the air, the Jews sent up a cry that matched the calamity and dashed to the rescue, with no thought now of saving their lives or husbanding their strength. For that which they had guarded so devotedly was disappearing before their eyes. This religious zeal lent the defenders a strength that belied their physical condition as they hurled themselves against the Roman onslaught with reckless abandon. The Romans brought the full might of their siege technology to bear against the temple walls. Massive battering rams pounded relentlessly against the stone fortifications, while towering siege engines allowed Roman archers to rain down volleys of arrows upon the defenders. The air grew thick with the acrid smoke of burning pitch and the dust of crumbling masonry as the assault intensified. As the battle raged, a debate that would echo through the centuries began to unfold. According to Josephus, Titus, the Roman commander, wished to preserve the temple as a testament to Rome's magnanimity and as a prize of war. Yet other sources, including the Roman historian Tacitus, suggest that Titus may have authorized its destruction, recognizing the temple's symbolic importance to Jewish resistance. Regardless of Titus's wishes, the chaos of battle soon took on a life of its own. As Roman troops pressed their advantage, fires began to break out amid the wooden structures of the temple complex. The flames, fanned by the hot summer winds, spread rapidly, threatening to engulf the entire precinct. The defenders found themselves caught between the advancing Roman forces and the spreading conflagration, their options dwindling with each passing moment. The final moments of the temple's existence were marked by scenes of unimaginable carnage and despair. Josephus described the horror in vivid detail. There was no pity for age, no regard for rank. Little children and old men, laymen and priests alike, were butchered. The temple courtyards, once the site of solemn rituals and joyous celebrations, became killing grounds as the Romans pressed their advantage. As the situation grew increasingly desperate, a Roman soldier, caught up in the frenzy of battle, hurled a burning brand through a window of the temple. The flames caught hold of the rich tapestries and wooden beams, and within moments, the fire had spread beyond control. The destruction of the Second Temple, on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, marked a pivotal moment in Jewish history. This date, already associated with calamities in Jewish tradition, would henceforth be observed as a day of mourning and fasting. The loss of the temple not only represented a military defeat, but also necessitated a fundamental shift in Jewish religious practice, as the center of worship and sacrifice was suddenly and violently removed. When the temple caught fire on August 30th, the tragedy foretold became reality. As flames consumed the sacred structure, the scene transformed into a harrowing inferno that would forever alter the course of Jewish history. The blaze spread rapidly through the temple's wooden components, accelerated by the flammable materials used in its construction, including timber and textiles. Josephus, a key historical source, vividly described the pandemonium that erupted as defenders and civilians alike attempted to escape the encroaching flames. He wrote, "As the flames shot into the air, the Jews sent up a cry that matched the calamity and dashed to the rescue, with no thought now of saving their lives or expanding their strength. For that which they had guarded so devotedly was disappearing before their eyes." This account captures the raw anguish of those witnessing their most sacred site's destruction. Within the temple complex, Jewish fighters, realizing the futility of their situation, made desperate charges against the Roman forces. These final efforts stemmed from profound despair and the knowledge that their world was disintegrating around them. Some priests, in an extraordinary display of devotion, continued performing sacred rituals even as the fire closed in. This act of faith in the face of certain death underscores the temple's deep spiritual significance and its guardians' unshakable belief. The conflagration's intense heat produced an unexpected and visually striking effect on the temple's ornate decorations. Gold adorning the sacred structure began to melt, creating rivulets of molten metal that flowed between the massive stone blocks. This haunting image of beauty, dissolving amidst destruction, became a powerful symbol of the day's losses. The temple's destruction created a horrifying soundscape. The roar of flames mingled with agonized screams, producing a cacophony that echoed through the city. This auditory backdrop accompanied the visual spectacle of the temple's demise, searing itself into survivors' memories. As the fire raged, centuries of history and faith were reduced to ash in hours. The temple, the beating heart of Jewish religious and cultural life, was being erased from the physical world. Each collapsing beam and crumbling wall represented the obliteration of a way of life that had endured for generations. Josephus noted that Roman soldiers, driven by fury and revenge, disregarded Titus's orders to extinguish the fire. This insubordination led to widespread slaughter of unarmed civilians as the temple burned, adding human cruelty to the natural destruction. The historian's vivid description of the aftermath paints a gruesome picture. Round the altar, the heaps of corpses grew higher and higher, while down the sanctuary steps poured a river of blood, and the bodies of those killed at the top slithered to the bottom. As the flames subsided and smoke cleared, the full extent of the destruction became apparent. The once mighty temple had collapsed, leaving only the western wall, standing as a silent testament to what had been lost. This remnant would become a significant site of mourning and pilgrimage for Jews in the centuries to come, a physical link to their destroyed heritage. Through the lingering smoke that shrouded the ruins, the remaining Jewish defenders faced a grim reality. Their holy sanctuary, the heart of their faith and culture, lay in ashes before them. Yet, even in the face of this devastating loss, the spirit of resistance burned on. The last remnants of the Jewish forces retreated to the upper city, determined to make their final stand against the Roman juggernaut. The upper city, with its formidable defenses atop the western hill of Jerusalem, presented a daunting challenge to the Roman legions. However, the might of Rome was not to be underestimated. 4 battle-hardened legions turned their full attention to this last bastion of Jewish resistance. The Romans, under Titus, approached the siege with methodical precision, adapting their tactics to urban warfare. The narrow streets that had once favored the defenders now became a deadly maze as the Romans advanced. At the heart of their assault stood the mighty battering rams, engines of destruction that thundered against the walls of Herod's palace. As the walls crumbled, The conflict evolved into bitter hand-to-hand fighting. Every alleyway and building became a battlefield, filled with the clash of steel and cries of the wounded. The Jewish fighters, though vastly outnumbered and weakened by months of starvation, fought with a determination born of desperation. Many chose to fight to the bitter end, rather than face capture or enslavement. For the Romans, the prolonged siege had taken its toll, both physically and psychologically. As they pushed deeper into the upper city, many soldiers showed little mercy, their pent-up frustration finding release in acts of brutality against combatants and civilians alike. As the battle raged on, the area held by the Jewish defenders shrank relentlessly. In these final hours, Simon bar Giora and John of Giscala, once bitter rivals, now stood united in the face of annihilation. Their reconciliation became a powerful symbol of Jewish unity in the face of impending doom. The defenders rallied around their leaders, drawing strength from this newfound solidarity. Yet, even as they fought with renewed vigor, the inexorable advance of the Roman legions continued. The unity of the Jewish resistance stood in stark contrast to the methodical, unstoppable march of the Roman war machine. The end came on September 7th. After days of intense fighting, the last pockets of resistance in the upper city were finally overwhelmed. As the Roman standards were raised over the smoking ruins, Jerusalem had fallen. The city that had stood as the center of Jewish religious and cultural life for centuries was now firmly in Roman hands. The aftermath of the siege reshaped the course of history. Many survivors were captured and sold into slavery, while others faced execution. Josephus, the Jewish historian who had defected to the Roman side, reported staggering casualty figures. While his claim of over 1 million deaths was likely an exaggeration, the scale of the carnage was undoubtedly immense, marking a profound turning point in Jewish history and the ancient world. From these ashes of devastation, a transformation began that would alter the course of an entire people. As the dust settled on the ruins of the Holy City, a new chapter in Jewish history unfolded, characterized by diaspora, adaptation, and the birth of a reimagined faith. In the immediate aftermath of the siege, Titus ordered the systematic destruction of Jerusalem's remaining structures. The once proud city, with its grand buildings and sacred spaces, was reduced to rubble. This act of demolition served as a punitive measure and a stark message against future rebellion. The survivors faced a future fraught with uncertainty and peril. Many were forcibly dispersed across the Roman Empire, with Josephus reporting that 97,000 Jews were enslaved. This mass enslavement represented a profound spiritual and cultural upheaval for a people whose identity was intrinsically linked to their ancestral land. The fate of these captives varied, but many young men were sent to Egyptian mines or forced to fight as gladiators in Roman arenas. In Rome, the victory over Jerusalem was celebrated with a grand triumph in 71 CE. This spectacle, unique in Roman history, was dedicated to the subjugation of an existing province's population rather than the conquest of new territory. The procession featured captured Jewish leaders and treasures looted from the temple, including the sacred menorah, its golden branches glinting in the sunlight as it was carried far from its home. The aftermath of the siege saw a significant shift in Jerusalem's landscape. A Roman military garrison was established, its presence discouraging many Jews from returning. The city that had once been the heart of Jewish religious and cultural life now pulsed to a different rhythm, its streets echoing with the tramp of Roman boots. As Jerusalem lay under Roman control, the Jewish diaspora expanded dramatically. Refugees fled to other lands, carrying with them the memories of their lost home and the traditions of their faith. These dispersed communities played a crucial role in preserving and adapting Jewish culture in the centuries to come. Perhaps the most profound consequence of Jerusalem's fall was the forced transformation of Jewish religious practice. The loss of the temple, the central pillar of Jewish worship, necessitated a radical reimagining of how Jews connected with their God. From this crisis emerged Rabbinic Judaism, a form of the faith that would become mainstream in the centuries that followed. Rooted in Pharisaic traditions, this new expression of Judaism placed greater emphasis on the study of Torah and the observance of religious law in daily life. The synagogue, once secondary to the temple, now took center stage as the focal point of Jewish communal life. The consequences of Jerusalem's fall reverberated far beyond the city's ruined walls. Throughout the empire, the event was seen as a decisive victory, a demonstration of Rome's unassailable power. Yet, paradoxically, this very triumph contained within it the seeds of Judaism's enduring survival. Forced to adapt to a world without their central shrine, the Jewish people developed new forms of worships and community that would prove remarkably resilient in the face of future challenges. This cataclysmic moment set in motion a profound transformation that would reshape the religious landscape for millennia to come. From the ashes of the temple, two diverging paths emerged, each forging a new identity in the wake of catastrophe. The destruction of the sacred center of Jewish worship catalyzed a remarkable reinvention of faith, giving rise to Rabbinic Judaism, and indirectly contributing to the ascendance of Christianity as a distinct religion. In the aftermath of the siege, the Jewish people faced an existential crisis. The temple, the beating heart of their religious and cultural life, lay in ruins. Yet from this devastation, a new form of Judaism began to take shape. Yohanan ben Zakkai, a sage who escaped the besieged city, established a center of Jewish learning in Yavne, laying the foundation for Rabbinic Judaism. This act of foresight would sustain Jewish identity and practice for generations to come. The shift from temple-centered worship to a focus on Torah study and synagogue gatherings represented a radical reimagining of Jewish religious life. Judaism became portable, allowing the Jewish people to maintain their faith and traditions even in diaspora. This adaptability would prove crucial in the face of future challenges and dispersions. While some Jewish sects faded into obscurity following the temple's destruction, the followers of Jesus of Nazareth found new meaning in the catastrophe. For early Christians, the fall of Jerusalem was interpreted as a fulfillment of Jesus' prophecies, reinforcing their belief in his messianic status. This interpretation accelerated the separation of Christianity from its Jewish roots as the nascent religion developed its own distinct theology and practices. The Roman Empire's relationship with its Jewish population underwent a seismic shift in the wake of the siege. The establishment of a military camp on the ruins of Jerusalem discouraged Jewish resettlement, altering the demographic landscape of the region. These geopolitical changes, intertwined with the religious transformations, shaped the course of history for centuries to come. The memory of Jerusalem's fall became a cornerstone of Jewish identity and theology, emphasizing themes of loss and hope for future restoration. This narrative of national tragedy and resilience continued to influence Jewish thought and practice throughout history, serving as a touchstone for communal memory and aspiration. The Roman triumph, held in 71 CE to celebrate the victory over the Jews, served as a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. The spectacle included the display of treasures looted from the temple, including the sacred menorah. This triumphal procession was commemorated in the construction of the Arch of Titus in Rome, a monument that stands to this day as a testament to the enduring impact of Jerusalem's fall on the cultural memory of both conquerors and conquered. The siege's legacy has been preserved and reinterpreted through various forms of art and literature over the centuries. From ancient historical accounts to modern artistic representations, these events have been depicted and analyzed, reflecting their ongoing significance in cultural and religious narratives. The fall of Jerusalem stands as a pivotal moment in the history of religion, marking both an end and a beginning. The destruction of the temple, while devastating, sparked a remarkable period of religious innovation and adaptation. The emergence of Rabbinic Judaism and the acceleration of Christianity's development as a separate faith tradition demonstrate the profound impact of this historical event on the spiritual landscape of the Western world. Beyond its religious significance, this watershed moment serves as a stark reminder of the devastating potential of human conflict. As the siege unfolded, deep-seated grievances against Roman rule intertwined with internal divisions among the Jewish population, creating a powder keg of tension and violence. The event stands as a timeless microcosm of human nature in conflict, offering profound insights that resonate across centuries. The siege reveals the destructive power of internal strife. While the Roman forces posed an existential threat, the city's inhabitants found themselves embroiled in factional warfare. Josephus, the Jewish historian who chronicled these events, noted that the masses were eager to destroy the powerful, highlighting how class warfare weakened the Jewish resistance. This internal conflict demonstrates how divisions within a community can be as perilous as external threats, a lesson that echoes through history to modern geopolitical conflicts. The brutal realities of ancient warfare and its catastrophic impact on civilian populations are laid bare. As Roman legions tightened their grip, conditions within Jerusalem's walls deteriorated rapidly. Josephus described a scene of slaughter and flight, where peaceful citizens found themselves caught in the crossfire. The desperation reached horrific heights, with reports of cannibalism among the starving inhabitants. These grim details serve as a sobering reminder of the human cost of conflict, particularly in densely populated urban areas. Despite overwhelming odds, the defenders' initial successes highlight the power of determination and resistance to oppression. However, the ultimate outcome serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of rebellion against vastly superior forces. The Jewish defenders faced annihilation due to their inability to unite against a common enemy, underscoring the importance of strategic thinking and unity in the face of existential threats. The aftermath of the siege reveals long-term consequences. The establishment of a Roman military presence led to further suppression of Jewish identity and culture, demonstrating how warfare can reshape societies for generations. Perhaps the most enduring lesson is the resilience of culture and faith in the face of catastrophe. Despite the destruction of the Second Temple, Judaism adapted and evolved, giving rise to new forms of worship and scholarship that sustained the faith through centuries of diaspora. This ability to preserve and reinvent cultural identity offers a powerful message of hope and perseverance. The relevance of these ancient events to our modern world is striking. Contemporary conflicts often mirror the themes of extremism, internal division, and the impact of warfare on civilian populations. By studying this historical event, we gain valuable perspective on current geopolitical tensions and the cyclical nature of human conflict. Understanding the siege of Jerusalem provides crucial insights into faith, identity, and power, themes that continue to shape our world today. The event serves as a reminder of the dangers of absolutist ideologies and the importance of dialogue and compromise in resolving conflicts. It also highlights the need for strong, unified leadership in times of crisis and the potential consequences of failing to achieve it. Beneath the modern city, the earth itself preserves what no chronicler could record. As archaeologists delve into the layers of history, they uncover tangible evidence of the Roman siege that shook the foundations of the ancient city. These silent witnesses, buried for centuries, offer a unique perspective on the events that transpired during those fateful days. Excavations in Jerusalem have revealed significant physical evidence of the Roman assault, corroborating and expanding upon historical accounts. Archaeologists have uncovered destruction layers that align with the timeline of the siege, providing a stark reminder of the violence that engulfed the city. Within these layers, researchers have found a grim array of artifacts that speak to the intensity of the conflict. The archaeological record presents a diverse range of evidence, from weapons of war to the remains of siege victims, arrowheads, ballista balls, and other implements of destruction offer a chilling glimpse into the Roman arsenal. Human bones, some bearing marks of violent death or malnutrition, illustrate the catastrophic impact on the civilian population. These discoveries bridge the gap between historical narratives and the personal tragedies of individuals caught in the conflict. The fiery demise of Jerusalem, vividly described in historical texts, finds confirmation in the archaeological record. Burnt wooden beams and other carbonized remnants not only corroborate written accounts, but also provide valuable data for scientific analysis. These findings offer insights into the intensity and spread of the fires that raged during the siege's final days, painting a vivid picture of the city's destruction. Coins and everyday artifacts from the siege layers reveal the economic conditions and cultural practices of Jerusalem under duress. The distributions and types of coins found indicate patterns of trade and the siege's impact on the city's economy. Personal belongings discovered in the rubble humanize the conflict, illustrating how individuals struggle to maintain normalcy amidst extraordinary circumstances. Recent archaeological work has focused on the Upper City, an area that saw intense fighting during the siege's final stages. Traces of extensive fire damage align with historical accounts of brutal house-to-house combat, providing physical evidence of the Romans' final push. Advancing technology promises further insights into the events. Ground-penetrating radar and advanced imaging technologies allow archaeologists to survey previously inaccessible or sensitive areas, potentially revealing hidden structures and artifacts that could shed new light on the siege. Substantial archaeological evidence exists for the Temple Mount walls and their vicinity. Prominent archaeologist Ronnie Reich noted that these findings align closely with Josephus's historical accounts. The archaeological record has revealed collapses of massive stones from the Temple Mount's walls, thrown onto the streets by Roman soldiers during the siege. These physical remnants provide a tangible connection to the dramatic events described in historical texts, bringing the past vividly to life and deepening our understanding of this pivotal moment in history. While these fallen stones tell their silent story through the ages, artists across time have given voice to the siege's drama in their own way. From medieval illuminations to blockbuster video games, the fall of Jerusalem has been reimagined countless times, each interpretation offering a unique lens on this pivotal moment in history. The siege of Jerusalem has long captivated the imaginations of artists and storytellers, inspiring a rich tapestry of cultural works that span continents and centuries. In the realm of visual art, the event has been immortalized in numerous paintings that capture the raw emotion and devastating impact of the Roman assault. Notable works from the 17th to 19th centuries, such as Nicolas Poussin's The Destruction of the Temple at Jerusalem, 1637, Wilhelm von Kaulbach's The Destruction of Jerusalem by Titus, 1846, and Francesco Hayez's The Destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, 1867, reflect evolving artistic movements and cultural perspectives on this historical event. As artistic interpretations evolved, so too did the mediums through which the siege was portrayed. Literature allowed for more nuanced explorations of the event's complexity. The Middle English poem Siege of Jerusalem, composed between 1370 and 1390, stands as a testament to the enduring cultural memory of the siege in medieval times. Blending historical accounts with contemporary sensibilities, the modern era has seen a continued evolution in the portrayal of the siege, reflecting changing cultural perspectives and technological advancements. The animated historical drama film Legend of Destruction, 2021, represents a contemporary approach to presenting the events of 70 CE, utilizing animation to recreate the scale and intensity of the siege in ways that would be prohibitively expensive or logistically impossible with live-action filming. The interactive nature of video games has opened up yet another avenue for exploring the siege of Jerusalem. Game developers have recognized the dramatic potential of this historical event, creating experiences that allow players to engage with the conflict in a hands-on manner, often striving for historical accuracy in their depictions of weaponry, architecture, and battle tactics. While these artistic and interactive interpretations bring the siege to life for modern audiences, physical reminders of the event still stand. The Arch of Titus in Rome, erected to commemorate the Roman victory, serves as a lasting monument to the siege's impact on both Jewish and Roman narratives. The arch's famous relief, depicting the spoils taken from the temple, including the sacred menorah, provides a tangible link to the events. The persistent fascination with the siege of Jerusalem across various media and time periods speaks to its enduring significance in our collective cultural consciousness. Each new interpretation adds another layer to our understanding of this pivotal moment in history. These retellings not only keep the memory of Jerusalem's fall alive, but also serve as a reflection of the societies that produced them, revealing how different cultures and eras have grappled with themes of conflict, faith, and the human cost of war. As popular culture continues to shape our memory of historical events, the Siege of Jerusalem remains a powerful testament to the enduring impact of the past on our present understanding of human conflict and resilience. The fall of Jerusalem marked a watershed moment in history, its repercussions echoing through the centuries. The destruction of the Second Temple catalyzed a profound transformation in Jewish religious practice, giving rise to Rabbinic Judaism. This shift from temple-centered rituals to Torah study and synagogue gatherings represented a remarkable adaptation to catastrophic loss. The siege's legacy endures, shaping religious thought and cultural identity for millennia. As Josephus wrote, "The spectacle of the burning temple aroused pity in none who beheld it." This vivid image encapsulates the tragedy and transformation experienced by Jerusalem. Archaeological discoveries continue to deepen our understanding of this pivotal moment, providing tangible connections to a past that still resonates in contemporary struggles over sacred spaces.